So just wanted to make sure that we have this picture in our mind, that we have main, and eventually we get access to this array, which was created elsewhere by the call. The reference was returned back, right? And so now we have our array of 4 doubles, and we begin using it. So we say, okay, let's store some values in it. It's another example of terrible hard coding of numbers, which will never make sense to anyone in the world unless you say, oh, this is just a demo. It doesn't mean anything. But still, creating constant variables is a much better choice than using any kind of hard-coded numbers in commercial application code. Well, anyway, we successfully compute the sum of everything and then divide by the length of the array, the size of our array, and get average. What could go wrong? What if I changed, well, what if I just, first I got rid of this and say, okay, we'll do this later, right? So I save that, so I no longer bother going to my array and I just run this. The average is 0, because as you know, all arrays of primitive types are populated with 0 values. All bits inside those values, whether it's double or integer or character, are all populated with zeros. So that's why I get average 0, because my sum stays 0 because each price inside of my array is still 0. Right? Because that's what this new does. New allocates memory and initializes that memory to all zeros. So as a result, all of the 4 doubles that I have are set to 0. So the next thing is that I say, okay, what if I change this to 0? Okay, so I change default array size to 0. Is it possible so that, in some cases, depending on what happens in the application, right? This is just the default array size. I may compute it somehow based on other information. And what if an array size happens to be 0 and I call create array with 0 size? So this new double array size will get 0. And if I try to first when I have something that I'm curious about, I don't want to run it just yet. Instead, I will just simply go to the name of my project and say build. Right? So building, and it builds fine. Right? So I can take a look at my output, and it says the build is successful. So observation number 1, creation using new to create arrays and specify an array of 0 size is permitted for the purposes of generic code. That, if it happens to be, it's almost like a nonsense to create an array of 0 size, but still it's possible because there's no conflicts with anything in memory, right? There will be just a much smaller object created, and that single field in it will indicate 0, that the array length will be 0. However, if I run this code, right, what I get is average is not a number. The outcome of this computation is that sum is getting divided by the price length. It results in not a number. With integers, if we change this code to use integer array, we should get an exception division by 0. But the floating point arithmetic coprocessor, or whatever part of the CPU responsible for handling floating point numbers, when it sees division by 0, it generates a very specific value inside of this average, which indicates not a real number. And you can clearly get not a real number as a result of dividing something by 0. And that's the case. So I just wanted to show you this possibility that, first of all, array size can be 0, it's allowed, but then suddenly this becomes somewhat dangerous and needs to be looked at very carefully, just to show you those possibilities. In practice, those things happens a lot. Those things do happen. So the bottom line is, when you see someone using length of an array, don't always assume that it's not a positive number. It can be 0, right? So it can be 0. And so once again, if I just take double and press Control H to replace it with int, right? So we'll just say replace all. So I replaced all doubles with int, and instead of using those double values, now I'm using 0, right? And so I can even try to well, I cannot populate it with anything because the array size is 0. So, but this time, an integer arithmetic should be used when I compute my average. And in this case, if I run it, I get the expected arithmetic exception, division by 0. Okay, so that you are aware of it. So the outcome of this is significantly different in all of these cases. With integers, you get an exception. With doubles, trying to divide by 0, you don't get an exception, but you still should be analyzing for not a number. And we will come back to this discussion. I would like to kind of switch back to talk more specifically about arrays. So these are some interesting things today, and they're very practical. They happen every day. As we speak right now, someone writes code in a commercial application which has to deal with all of these issues. So important stuff. Questions? All right. So anyway, that's just a few words about computing an average. Something really cool and nice to have in the library, Java util arrays is a class which contains it serves as a utility class. In other words, it's a collection of static methods which are very, very useful when dealing with arrays. Specifically for arrays, Java 7 introduced this as a new set of components in Java API library. And so you can use methods fill to populate values inside your arrays. You can compare arrays by saying equals. You can make copies. Remember, we said once in a while, most likely, we're going to have to be able to produce copies of our collections, including arrays, as an example. And copyOf does that job. So I guess example of using utility class as opposed to maybe writing your own logic, such as create. Once you created the array, then you can say, all right, let's create another array which is like double the size of that, and then create a loop which piece by piece, each element moves it over so that you produce the copy of it. I can guarantee you that the copyOf method that comes with an array class will be much more efficient, will run faster, will probably use some algorithm, running a lower level code, which will do it much faster. So the bottom line is that we should not be ignorant. It's easy to say, okay, I understand what array is. I can create an array, populate the data, manipulate the data, and do all kind of things with array elements. But then we should not be ignorant about the existence of the arrays class with all these methods. Anytime we need something like this, we should be using it. For example, a sort algorithm is available here. Well, I can assure you that it's going to be pretty efficient, right? Could be more efficient than your own custom version of sort, which you may code manually, just try to invent it on your own, which is nothing wrong, probably has a great educational value, but still, in a commercial code, you probably want to make a call to sort, and it will sort the numbers. Yes, question?
Do you know what type of sort is in that? Is it a bubble sort? Is it
No, 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 no. It's most likely a version of a quicksort algorithm. That would be my guess. There's a quicksort which is very popular with API libraries. Uh, we will talk about sorts maybe next week or maybe 2 weeks from now. Most likely quicksort. Okay.